Picture someone scrubbing a greasy cooking pot with wet ash from last night's fire. The grease lifts, the pot shines, they wipe their hands and move on. They have no idea that animal fat and plant ash just underwent a chemical reaction called saponification. That the brown slippery film on the water is soap. That they didn't invent anything. Chemistry did it behind their back. That image is how soap probably began. Not a laboratory, not a patent. Not a moment of genius on a chalkboard. An accident during someone else's job. And honestly, what comes next is even stranger. Because the real question isn't who invented soap. It's why humans used it to clean wool for centuries before anyone trusted it on their own skin. Let's start with a fact that ruins the fairy tale. Nobody sat down to invent soap. The ingredients were already everywhere. Wood ash from every fire. Animal fat on every butchering knife, cooking pot, and sheepskin. Mix them with enough grease present and saponification happens whether you want it or not. But here's the problem for archaeologists. Soap is biodegradable. Unlike glass or pottery, it rots away. Our entire origin story comes from clay tablets, not dug-up soap bars. We may never hold the first soap in our hands. The oldest written recipe we have is not a science document. It's an accounting record from Mesopotamia, around 2,200 years before the Common Era. A clay tablet from the Sumerian city of Girsu, in what is now southern Iraq. It describes cloth manufacture. 1 quart of oil mixed with 6 quarts of potash, leached from wood ash to degrease wool before dyeing. Not bathing, not hand washing. Textile accounting. And the scale of that industry would embarrass a modern fast fashion supply chain. In a single 3-month period in Girsu alone, archaeologists calculate over 200,000 sheep were shorn. Before mechanical shears existed, workers plucked and cut wool by hand at factory scale. A single textile mill in Ur could employ 10,000 laborers and produce more than 400 tons of wool in 1 year. State-run factories, enslaved workers, debtors, laborers with names we'll never know. To dye wool, you must strip the lanolin, the natural grease coating every fleece. Ash water helped, but someone eventually realized the fat itself was the point. Add oil deliberately to the alkaline mixture, and you don't have to wait for whatever you're washing to supply the grease. You have a bucket of liquid soap ready to go. Except it didn't look like soap to you. It looked like greasy brown sludge. It smelled like tallow and smoke. Early soap was always liquid broth, never the white bar in your shower. Solid bar soap came thousands of years later. Chemists today can explain the difference. Sodium from oceanside plants makes harder soap. Potassium from inland hardwood ash makes softer, more liquid soap. Ancient workers were doing ionic chemistry without a periodic table. And for centuries after that tablet was pressed into clay, there is no evidence anyone used the mixture to wash human bodies. Sumerian priests purified themselves with ash and water before sacred rites. Not soap. Soap was a factory product for textiles. The first hint that someone applied it to skin comes nearly 1,000 years later on a cuneiform tablet in the Hittite capital of Boğazköy in modern Turkey. Still closer to medicine than to daily hygiene. Meanwhile, 3,000 kilometers west, Rome built the ancient world's most sophisticated bathing culture. Aqueducts, heated public pools, complexes that could serve thousands of citizens a day. And Romans mostly did not wash with soap. Their method was oil. Slather olive oil on the skin. Scrape everything off with a curved bronze tool called a strigil. Dirt, sweat, dead skin, oil, all removed together. Pliny the Elder, writing in the year 77, describes soap as a Gallic invention. A pomade of tallow and ashes that Germanic men rubbed into their hair to give it a reddish tint. Hair dye and skin treatment. Not shower gel. The famous legend says soap takes its name from Mount Sapo, a hill near Rome where sacrificial animal fat mixed with rain and ash and flowed into the Tiber, where women discovered it cleaned laundry. Mount Sapo does not exist. No such hill appears in any Roman map or survey. Linguists think the word sapo was borrowed from a Germanic language, cognate with the Latin word for tallow, sebum. The mountain story was fitted to the word afterward. Rome's laundry workers, the fullones, cleaned wool by standing barefoot in tubs and treading on garments soaked in water, aged urine, and fuller's earth, stomping the fabric like grapes in a wine press. A 2026 experimental reconstruction found stale urine performed as well as, or slightly better than, modern Castile soap on greasy wool, and left no detectable odor after drying. The Romans had soap. They knew about it. They exported bathing culture across an empire. But the chemistry lived mostly in the laundry, not the bathhouse. So where did the accident actually repeat often enough for someone to notice? Experimental archaeologists point to a less romantic source than sacrificial altars: the perfume industry. Ancient perfumers strained aromatic oils through woven cloth again and again. Those cloths became saturated with expensive fats and had to be degreased for reuse. Strong wood ash lye plus repeatedly greasy textiles produces observable foam. Not once, on accident, but on a schedule. That is a plausible path. Repeatable, visible, professional. Much of what circulates online as ancient soap history is wrong. The Pompeii fullonicae was not a soap factory. A pseudo-Galen recipe popular on the internet was forged in the 16th century. Phoenicians bringing soap to Western Europe is another unsupported claim. In Egypt, around 1550 before the Common Era, the Ebers Papyrus describes combining animal and vegetable oils with alkaline salts into a substance used for skin diseases. Medicine first. Hygiene followed only when people connected clean skin to survival. And soap's chemistry has a stranger epilogue. The same reaction that cleaned Mesopotamian wool is destroying masterpieces in museums. In oil paintings, lead and zinc pigments react with fatty acids in linseed oil to form metal soaps. White eruptions push through paint layers like tiny volcanoes. Vermeer's view of Delft has literal soap spots on its red rooftops. Up to 70% of conserved oil paintings may be affected. Researchers studying Rembrandt found protrusions on the anatomy lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp caused by lead carboxylates, not air bubbles as once believed. Soap shapes civilizations in both directions. For most of European history after the fall of Rome, bathing became suspect. Medical authorities warned that warm water opened the pores to disease. The Black Death helped close public bathhouses. Cleanliness was redefined as changing your linen undergarments, not washing your body. Louis XIV of France supposedly bathed only 3 times in his entire life. And those were doctors' orders for convulsions. Colonists arriving in Plymouth did not bathe regularly. Native accounts describe Europeans who smelled offensive. Squanto reportedly tried to convince them to wash. They refused. In colonial America, soap making was seasonal women's work tied to butchering. Saved fat. Leached ash. Boiled in a pot. Used for laundry and dishes, not bodies. Taking a proper bath meant hauling a wooden tub, heating well water, finding the soap, preserving modesty. A chore done a few times a year. Mass adoption of body soap had to wait for germ theory, the Civil War sanitary movement, and plumbing that delivered clean water to cities. In 1891, New York City opened its first public bath and handed every visitor a free cake of Colgate soap. Civic leaders had to bribe people to wash. Soap kills germs you cannot see on hands that already look clean. That is why even today, studies show doctors wash their hands half as often as they should. The life-saving effect is invisible. The discoverer would never have known. UNICEF estimates that if every cook used soap, respiratory infections would drop 25% and diarrheal disease would fall by half. More than 1 million lives saved every year. A clay tablet about wool dyeing. A greasy bucket in a textile mill. A perfumer's straining cloth bubbling in lye. Nobody tried to invent soap. Chemistry did it during other work, over and over, until someone wrote down the ratio and still didn't put it on their skin for another 1,000 years. The greatest medical discovery in human history cleans something you cannot see. And we are still catching up on using it.